Welcome to the Artist Academy podcast, a place where we focus on the business side of art to help you attract more customers, to increase your profits, to ultimately live a life of creativity and financial freedom. I'm your host, Andrea Earhart, and this week's episode, we have a special midweek episode, actually, because we have Meg Wagler on, and she is the mastermind behind the Music and Arts Festival Overlay, which happens every year now in Springfield, Missouri. And I wanted to bring her on to showcase what she's doing for the arts here in Springfield and to promote the upcoming festival. It's in just a couple days. So this gives you a look behind what it takes to organize something like this. It's a lot, but there's a lot of benefit behind it. And she has a really strong mission. So I'm going to let her tell you all about it. But we have Overlay Festival coming up this weekend. Here it is. Okay, Meg, give us a recap of who you are and what you do. I know we've had you on the podcast. It's been a while, though.
Yeah. I think it was 2020 or 2021. It's been a while. So yeah, I'm Meg and I am a visual artist and creative director. I've been doing just creative work professionally since 2011 and then went out on my own in 2019 to do independent artwork. So I've been painting murals and doing illustrations and kind of took some of my corporate work into my business. So I do illustrations for brands and books and all kinds of stuff.
Love it. And we painted together. So for anybody listening, you are in Springfield, Missouri. And so we've actually painted together a few times years ago, though. And now you're super busy doing all the things and you're planning a mural festival that's happening very soon. Can you tell me about that? Okay, let's start at the beginning. Where did this idea come from? Because I remember you mentioning it a long time ago and the hoops you had to jump through in the beginning. But where did the idea come from?
Yeah. So I live in Springfield and I've been here since 2007. So it's been a minute. And so I consider this home now. But for a while there, I fell into, I think, the same category that a lot of other people do that come down here for college, where I was planning to leave after I got my degree. And so my husband and I just love to travel and we have friends that live in different areas that we like to visit. And we were often looking for where we were going to move. We were kind of vetting places that we would go. And ultimately we, kind of started to thread the dots together of what is it about these places that's different than Springfield that we are drawn to? And a really strong visual arts community was one of those things, art districts and these really, I think, just impactful pieces of public art. I know that that's what we've talked about is wanting and needing a space like that here in a way that felt like there were diverse styles and just a different energy than what currently existed here. So we wanted to do something with a little bit different flavor. And so we built what initially was Mid by Midwest. That was the initial namesake so that we could try to give a nod to what we were trying to do with incorporating the community into what we were doing. But ultimately, as we came out and started our own nonprofit, which is a whole big beast of a job, we named it something that felt like ours here in this space. So it didn't feel like a replica of something else. That's where the name Overlay came to be. So we're excited about that. And we just actually got our 501c3 status this summer. That's just been a long process. And so I've been doing that really pro bono for the last 5 years, trying to get that off of the ground and moving. So it's a lot of work, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Okay. So you've had this now. So this is going to be the third year that you've had this going?
This will be the second year. We had to postpone twice because of COVID. So in 2020, we were going to debut and that felt like a very easy decision to postpone. And then 2021 came around and we were a month away from hosting and the Delta wave surged here in the area. And so we just worked with city officials and, deemed that it wasn't a safe time to do that. So we had to postpone one more time and then finally hosted in 2022. And at that point, we were a fiscal agent under a nonprofit sponsorship. So a lot of times that's how nonprofits get their start, is they kind of like incubate under another nonprofit. And then the idea is you get your legs about you and you kind of get a run of, a feel for what it's like to manage a nonprofit. And then you kind of come out from under that wing and start your own thing. So we were under contract with that fiscal agent through the end of 2022. So then just based off of how that time frame went, we had to then kind of quickly come out from under that wing and do all of our bylaws and establish our board and all of the paperwork and applications and legal processes to get all of that together. So since this is pro bono for me, it was really difficult to do that alongside trying to raise a family and run a career myself and a business. And so it just moved really slowly. But now we've got all of that and we're excited to host what is going to be our second event this October.
Awesome. So for anybody who's ever thought, hey, I kind of want to put on a mural festival in my area, what advice do you have for them?
Well, gosh, we should get coffee and we should talk about it because there's a lot to talk about. But there's, I think ultimately it is doable and it just really takes commitment and dedication, because it's the really obvious hard things like fundraising and getting, just kind of like public momentum behind something. Those are hard to do in their own right. But when you're coming from the private, like kind of business sector, and then you're trying to integrate into the nonprofit sector, there's a whole different community of people that to work with. And so it's just a lot of time of getting to know humans and connecting. And you really have to spend the time establishing in that space. And it's been difficult for us to do that simultaneously, especially with COVID, right? Like in the beginning, the thought was like, I'm going to get it and I'm going to hit the ground running. And then we couldn't, I couldn't go grab coffee with anybody. I couldn't, try to introduce myself anywhere outside of the web space. And it's just been so saturated since then that it's been difficult to break through in that way. So I think it's an understanding of, you're just kind of on call all of the time and it's a lot of work, but you have to kind of keep your why and keep your initiative to what you're doing to keep some of that afloat. And then once it starts gaining some traction, then it feels a little more fun. Then it feels like, okay, like once the artists are here and once they're painting and we get to gift that to the community, it does pay off for sure. But it's an endurance trial. For sure.
Yeah, because you think about all the different elements of it. So there's getting funding, there's getting the artists, there's getting volunteers. You have to have bathrooms. You have a guy that does video on social media. I imagine it's a guy. I don't know, but there's so many different aspects of it. So let's talk about a little bit of each. So let's start. Everybody's favorite thing is to talk about money and funding. So how did you get funding in the beginning versus how it's now? Because you're not paying yourself, right? Or can you now pay yourself? Or
not yet. So eventually, yes, but you have to have capital funding for operational costs to generate a salary for a nonprofit. And to qualify for substantial operating budgets, most of the time you have to have 3 years of programming. So it's a little bit of chicken before the egg. And so in the beginning stages, like in this incubation period, it's really based off of sponsorships and donations from local and regional donors. And so I think both festivals at this point have been a pretty good mix of having grant donations and sponsorships like for the event. So the same way that Lollapalooza has, Coca-Cola sponsors a stage, or, Hennessy comes out and does an activation or whatever, we can still garner those sponsorships. But there's also an on-ramp to credibility with bigger brands like that. Like, they're not going to show up at every festival, and Springfield is still a pretty small city. And so when I initially was reaching out, there were roadblocks there of like, well, what Springfield are you? Or, what now? And that part is a challenge. And so we really had to count on local donations and local sponsorships. And I think Springfield did show up to a pretty serious degree to help us with that, which is great. But ultimately, we still don't have access to a lot of the state and federal funding yet. But that's the next iteration for our financial story for sure.
So were you just going around knocking on doors with a flyer like, hey, or were you sending out emails? Like, is it connection through somebody? How were you getting funding?
Yeah, it's all of those things. So I think because of my experience in agency life, that was the first 10 years of my career. I had a pretty strong business acumen built up where I understood like, hey, I know that you guys have expendable dollars here and we're a nonprofit and this is a tax write-off. So like, let's discuss what are your goals for publicity, or do you not want publicity? Do you just want to anonymously donate to support paying artists? And it was a lot of conversation and a lot of really selling the concept and the idea, because it was also new to Springfield, right? Like murals are not new to Springfield, you know that, but it's this concept of having this event packed around it and celebrating this thing and frankly just paying artists respectable wages, right? Like not expecting it to be philanthropic or to just toss a couple $100 at somebody for painting this like massive beautiful public art piece. There was an education component that I felt really passionate about to say like, hey, it's time to pony up. Like if you guys want this for Springfield, we heard it with a lot of like local initiatives that were talking about Springfield kind of growing in certain ways economically. I really didn't want the arts to be left behind in those conversations. And I think there's other people here that are definitely doing a good job of advocating for the arts. And still, I don't think it's enough, right? So that's why I wanted to step in, is I think that there needs to be more done there to help move that needle. So that was a big part of the initiative of just kind of helping people understand what even it costs to do this. Like, how do muralists charge, per square foot? Like, what are the national norms and what should businesses be paying artists to put a mural on their building? Or how much does the value of the property increase when there's a mural in the space? So helping building owners understand like, hey, even if you're not giving us your dollars, this is an exchange because you're getting this benefit out of it. And I had to help them understand that as well. So it was a big challenge to get building owners on board. But frankly, I feel like that was an easier sell than getting people to understand that we really ought to be paying artists more.
Yeah, I appreciated. So I applied for the recent one and I appreciated the application in that it took about 30 minutes to do. It wasn't this full long thing where you have to submit a proposal and like all this thing. And I was like, oh, this is great. Because even if you don't get it, it's like, well, it's not the whole day wasted,
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. I was like, you can tell that there's somebody behind it who is an artist who knows those aggravations and you're keeping it from there and you're paying quite a bit. So this year is funded there's a lot of Route 66 grant money going out. I imagine that was where, and how did you apply? Where did you find?
Yeah. So this has taken a couple of different like turns around the way, which I think is always the case for grant funding or nonprofits in general is everybody trying to figure out like, okay, where can we allocate funds in ways that align with what the grant call is. And we were already moving forward with our festival and had the wall space under contract. And then we were approached by the Rotary Club because they were wanting to develop a partnership with the state commission to celebrate the centennial celebration for Route 66 here, which is, for people that aren't from Springfield, it's a big deal here, right? Like I would say recently it's been a big deal that it's the centennial celebration of like the letter being signed that named Springfield, Missouri as the birthplace of Route 66. So that's the celebration. And there's a lot of effort underway to kind of zhuzh up that space. And the mural that we were planning or the festival that we were planning was right like smack in that space. And so when they approached us, we initially were like, well, it doesn't really fit our format because to your point with the application, it's really important to me as an artist, as the founder of this thing, that I want there to be creative freedom for the artist like within reason, right? So we want to say, okay, here is a prompt and a concept provided by Overlay. And I want you as the artist to bring something to the table that fits that bill. And then there's what I call a red flag review process where the building partner and Overlay get to take a look at it and make sure that there's no like overtly offensive content, right? Like we want to make sure that we understand what's going up on the wall before it goes up. And so there are no negative, I guess, surprises by the time we're installing. And that's pretty typical for other festivals that do this. But I wanted to be really clear that it wasn't going to be a commissioned piece, right? Like we weren't going to be working with the artist and kind of saying, well, we don't really like this purple, or can you like shift this leaf over 3 pixels? Or, like I really wanted to advocate for the artist in that regard. And I didn't see it necessarily fitting in with what Route 66 Centennial would be hoping for. But then the conversation evolved into a challenge to bridge this gap of like an older generation that, kind of sees Route 66 in a certain light. And how do we get younger people interested in that, right? Like, how do we say that there's space here for more than just this cliche? And I liked that challenge because I think that there's magic there to understand like where there are overlaps. And so we took the challenge then at that point to say like, okay, let's figure out how to embody these like concepts of adventure and exploration and community and see what the artist does with that. So when we went through that process, the Rotary helped us develop our call for artists that you saw for the application. So that helped kind of just set the precedent on the front end for the artist that we have a theme and there's a prompt, but ultimately you get to decide what you do with this piece. And it worked out well. I think we had just great, amazing submissions that were so fun to go through. And I think that that's really what I'm excited about to do this, to bring this to Springfield, because the quality of what we're doing, I think is just exciting for the space and the scale that we're doing it.
For sure. So how did you get the funding for it? Did you go to a website and apply, or did you have to have like a full application for something? Like, do you have to be a nonprofit to apply for something like that? Or
sometimes yes, and sometimes no. In this case, we actually didn't end up receiving the state commission funding. So once they saw the artwork, they decided that it wasn't like cliche enough, right? Like it didn't hit the mark that they wanted it to hit. And so I had to then make a decision of, okay, well, how important is our mission to make sure that the artist has what we promised them that they would have? And we're not going to come back and say, hey, actually, let's throw a car in here and a diner. Like it was really important to me to make sure that we didn't do that. And also just a matter of time and where we were in the process. It was going to be a scramble. And I felt like it was really going to just go against what our value base is. So we just kind of just released that and then just started working directly with Rotary clubs. And they've been really supportive and excellent in understanding that vision and understanding like that there's something special to be had there to bridge those generational gaps and trust a younger organization to come in and say like, okay, well, here's what we recommend for these reasons. And I think that that's pretty special. So ultimately, the state commission was too rigid for us to receive that grant funding, but it still exists and it is a pretty competitive pool of money. And I am fairly certain, I don't know if that you have to be a nonprofit to receive the funding, but it's pretty specific allocations for funding. So you have to have expense breakdowns of where the money is going. And in that way, it's more complicated than getting sponsorship dollars, right? Like if I go to Coca-Cola and I say like, hey, we have this festival and we have all these branding opportunities, the objective for them is much different than the rules of like grants. And so it's really an exhausting balance to try to kind of shift gears with understanding everybody's different priorities and how to funnel that funding. So over the last 5 years, I've really garnered a lot of respect for nonprofits, but also for the fact that these are often full-time jobs for a reason, right? Like it takes a lot of relationship building and a lot of reading, you mentioned our application. That was absolutely a decision to keep it as not, it really wasn't brief. Like you mentioned, it still took 30 minutes, but I've applied for, 100 hundreds of calls for art, and it can take all day. It can take a week of me like gathering materials and updating my resume and my CV and putting new artwork up and writing the perfect cover letter and making sure that I've done my research on the organization so it feels really authentic, and then I don't get it. So it's like you pay $20 or whatever for the application, and it hurts a little bit more because you're like, well, I just wasted 3 days worth of production to do that. And I really didn't want that to be the case for us either. But it just really, I think, matters to be good to the artists and good to our words. So hopefully that comes through and how we're displaying.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the Rotary clubs, so like the different Rotary clubs around Springfield are funding this year. And that's not just a small fund. Is it 30,000? Do I remember that they're giving?
Yeah. So, and they're actually providing a larger grant than that, or for their partnership, and it's helping facilitate, because 30,000 is the artist fee.
Yeah.
And that's something that we also felt really adamant about, making sure that we held a respectable fee like for the artist there, because it's a 6-story mural. It's a lot of surface area. But because it's also really large, the lift that we have to use is like the ultra boom. It's like the most expensive single user lift that you can get, of course, because it has to articulate at over certain levels, and the surface preparation for the wall is much more expensive than just kind of power washing, a wall, because the mortar is damaged. And so we have to repair that, because it also matters to us to make sure that we're doing a good job, So there's a lot of contextual costs outside of that. And then putting that aside, we're trying to host this party around it, right? Like we're trying to host a festival with music and vendors and partnerships with, restaurants, and all of those little bits of facilitation either cost money or time. And it is not sustainable to do it pro bono for sure. But it's been pivotal partnership with Rotary, and, they've come together and just pulled from lots of different areas to make it happen. So that part has been really special. And then, of course, we have several other sponsorships that have come through the community, through like hospitality with Hotel Vandevort, and partnership with Discovery Center. That's where we're having our VIP viewing area, is going to be in their 4th floor. And Brightspeed is going to be providing Wi-Fi for the vendors, and Missouri State is helping with space, and the city, there's all of these components that come together to have to get approvals and permits and all of that jazz that cost just little bits here and there, and lots of time.
Yeah, lots of time. Well, you're doing something that I will absolutely never do. And I have a lot of questions for it. And just like, but I'm glad that you're doing it, because it's a lot, I recognize. And Springfield was a blank canvas like 10 years ago, really. And we have a couple, murals that are falling apart, but it's like, it takes a lot. And even just like myself going around and pitching like, hey, I want to do street art. Hey, I'm going to do this butterfly for free. Hey, I got burnt out. I was like, okay, I'm going to go pay for businesses now, because they'll pay me and I don't have to beg them. So.
Yeah. Like my experience and approaching you to apprentice and kind of like see how you did things, that was a big moment for me, where I was deciding on how I wanted to kind of like carve out a lane for myself, like, am I going to be focused more on public art or more kind of private? And I was so burnt out in the private space that I was like, I really care about making an impact on my community. And that's true. That's absolutely true. And I have to make money for my family. Like I have to have an income. And again, like because of my background and in this agency space, I had a salary that I had to make up for, that contributes to our mortgage, that contributes to our kids being able to have music lessons or whatever. And I felt like a pretty significant sense of pressure to make money, but I felt a really strong call to doing something for the community. But what bothered me so much, and I think where I got a lot of fire, was like, I can see how those two things are supposed to entwine. And it really deeply bothered me the more that I got integrated into this community where it really, art is just seen as a philanthropy. It's seen as an accompaniment to philanthropy. And it actually can be that, but it's not only that, right? Like, I've donated lots of hours and pieces to auction off for great causes. And so I have a heart for that for sure. But when you're talking about an artist coming out and spending a week in the heat on a lift, painting this permanent canvas for a community to enjoy, that's worth something. And I want people to know that. I want people to understand that not only is there creative intellectual property, like from a legal standpoint, that this person owns, but also, how do we as a community rally behind the intangible, like the soft qualities of what that provides to a community, And that's what I have felt really passionate about advocating for, is like, okay, everybody I talk to verbally agrees with that, but they need to show up then with their dollars, and not everybody can. And so maybe instead of your dollars, it's volunteer hours, or maybe it's advocacy by sharing the link to get tickets, or whatever it is. There's somebody that's partnering just by making centerpieces for our VIP tables. Like, there are these little ways that we can come together as a community and support each other in, I think, special ways that don't always equate to dollars, but there has to be an understanding of like, oh, this is a big gift. This is really cool for the community. And if I want to see it happen, then I need to support it. And that's what I'm hopeful for. That's what I work for. And I can sense that a big group of people agree with that and like to see it happen.
Yeah, definitely. I love when I am like just driving downtown and I look over and there's this big colorful mural. I'm like, yeah, because you see that in other cities, right? And now we're starting to see it in Springfield. I'm like, cool. That's just so cool.
Yeah. 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 I've seen more and more photos too of the hashtag 417 street art. So I remember us having a conversation when you years ago, when you're like, I started this hashtag and I don't know why it's not, like, what is going on? And so I started to, or just have used that in almost every time I post a new piece. And I started to notice other people catching on to that. I'm like, okay, cool. Yes, it just takes, I think, more people pushing collectively. And the more that I see that, I'm like, yes, it's working. Like, people are generating a sense of pride around it and excitement and ownership. And I think, like, someone was asking me recently why we have the format that we do, where the muralists are painting live during the festival, because it complicates things. It makes more work for us. But I think public art is always exciting. But I think there's something particularly exciting about watching it happen live, because you then connect it with the artist, right? So, like, again, there's the education of like, hey, a human being has to come up with this and like has to put this on the wall. But also, it's just like the sense of awe, right? Like, if you go to like a Cirque du Soleil show or something, and when you see someone doing something that you either can't do or you have respect for because you know what it takes, and you see people's different styles and techniques, and just watch something unfold out of nothing, this like literal blank wall, it's amazing. And people experience awe. And I think that's what makes people feel connected to the art piece. And so next month, when their family comes in town for Thanksgiving or whatever, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, we have to go downtown and I want to get breakfast at Druff's because I want to show you this mural. I watched them do this thing. And not only does that impact, of course, like all of the economics that we talk about wanting to impact, right? But like, it's also those soft quality cultural like impactors that we really, I think, need to feel civic pride, to be like, yes, I am from Springfield and I love Springfield for any number of these reasons. It doesn't have to be just the public art, right? But like, it starts to help all of that conversation unfold, I think.
Definitely. I'm going to come and bring my son. I think he's gonna he loves music. He's a super social dude. So he's gonna love
Oh,
all the things. So we're gonna come walk around. So for anybody who's listening and is in the Springfield area or might plan to be around the time. So this is gonna come out actually on the Wednesday before the event. So everybody's listening on a Wednesday. It's gonna be happening on Friday and Saturday. So what's going on Friday? What's going on Saturday? What are the highlights? Like what am I gonna see when I come on Friday or Saturday?
yeah. So Friday, October 3rd and Saturday, October 4th from 2 to 10 p.m. both days. We will have live DJ performances throughout the festival. And then we also have a partnership with Springfield Skate Park. So we're going to have a pop-up skate park down in the area that they're going to be helping us facilitate. So for the skaters in your life, or even if you're not a skater and you want to come watch, there will be a public skate portion and then a competition on Saturday. So there are the skate park activities, and then we have a couple of really exciting pop-up art installations happening. So Sarah Jones is doing this really cool, it's called Animal Crossing, and she's doing a couple of sculptures that are popping up. And Brad Noble is doing an Art of Everyone exhibit, which, if you're not familiar with, is a laser guided painting. And he does just it's just fun. It's so fun, and everybody gets to contribute to a community art piece that looks good afterward. Like sometimes that doesn't always end up being the case, but the way that he navigates it and makes it entertaining and so fun. So we'll have ways to interact with art pieces that get to stay in the community. We'll have other live art. We'll have vendors out, and then we'll see if we can pull it together. But we're looking at a breakdancing competition. So at this point, there's still very much so logistics, like, okay, how and where and who. So I'm hoping that we can pull that one off before the event. But there's also, like I mentioned, a VIP viewing area up in the fourth floor of the Discovery Center lot, or the Discovery Center. So it has like this perfect glass view of everything going on. And so we'll have cocktails and live art up there and exclusive, like kind of jazzy, soulful vibes happening up in that space as well. So I think there's lots of different flavors happening for different interests, and there will be some yard games. Oh, and I forgot to mention something I'm really excited about, what we're calling a community dining hall that I'm really excited to pilot this year, where instead of bringing out food trucks, which I know are great, but we're also like right in the downtown area, and there's so many good restaurants in that space. So we just wanted to have a place to hang out and make it easy for people to order these restaurants' food. So we are building what we're calling this community dining hall, and there will be QR code menus to Druff's and Wheelhouse and Greek Belly and Coffee Ethic, and even like more folks are wanting to hop on board for that. But essentially, you can either order and go pick it up and come back and hang out and watch the art unfold, or you can have delivery and have it brought to you. So the hope is that people get to enjoy their favorite parts of Springfield and still come out and support and enjoy what we're doing.
Love it. And see all the art and see the big murals happening and just all the things. Cool. Well, I will be there. Yeah. I'll see you likely on Friday. But yeah, thank you for bringing this to Springfield and just telling us all the behind the scenes of everything. As I think people are listening, like, okay, this is a lot. Like putting on an event is a lot. But yeah, in case anybody listening that has a really big passion for it, because there is a lot of work behind it. But I mean, you've been on the news and you've been like interviewed in several things, and like people have called me to say like, hey, I'm interviewing Meg. Do you have something to say about that? I'm like, cool. So it's definitely helping your art career too, right? Which isn't necessarily the purpose, but it is like a side byproduct.
Yeah, I would definitely. So I probably haven't like put icing on how difficult it is or how much work it is, which is true. And it's so life-giving. Like it's exhausting, and there's so much passion behind it that it makes it like a driver for me. And it really has connected me to more people, which has led to more work on my own, like independent business side. And I continue to just attract enough interest from people that are like, oh, Springfield? tell me more about that. So I think that it is making some impacts in a couple of different avenues. And that makes me believe even more deeply that it's great work and important work. And sometimes it just takes sacrifice to do those things. So it's whether or not it's time or money or both, or a little bit of sanity, but it is definitely worth it. And I do think it is tangible no matter what community you're in. I think there were lots of obstacles here in Springfield, but it's still possible to do.
Definitely. Thank you so much. I'll see you on Friday and wish you all the best with everything. And I don't know if I'll see you per se. You'll probably be running around doing all the things, but I'll be there. I'll be taking photos and sharing social media posts to try to promote it because I believe in what you're doing. And so, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. I hope to see you. I'll be like big bucket hat energy and, my walking shoes and probably on a golf cart sipping a high C or something ridiculous. So flag me down if you see me, and I look forward to it.
Thanks.